A Werewolf Shifter Romance by your one and only Maple. The wolf didn't move, only watched. Her hand lifted slowly, almost without thought. Her fingers shook, but something in her heart told her not to fear. "You're not real," she murmured, her voice breaking. "Or maybe you are. I don't know anymore." She stretched out her hand, closer now. The air between them hummed with strange warmth. When her fingertips brushed his fur, soft, impossibly warm, a jolt of something shot through her, sharp and deep like lightning wrapped in tenderness. The wolf didn't flinch. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, as though acknowledging her. Then, a growl, low, ferocious. Behind her, Elara spun around, her breath catching. From the shadows, another wolf emerged. Darker, ragged, eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Its snarl echoed through the trees. "No," she breathed, stepping back. The white wolf moved instantly. A blur of motion, a flash of light and muscle. The dark one lunged, claws cutting the air. The clash was primal and terrifying. Elara stumbled backward, heart hammering as the two wolves collided with a sound like thunderfur, teeth, growls. The forest shook with their fury. The dark wolf snapped, catching the white one's shoulder. Blood streaked across the leaves, dark and gleaming. The white wolf retaliated with a feral snarl, driving the other into the ground, teeth flashing. Elara pressed a hand to her mouth, frozen. She wanted to scream but couldn't, her voice trapped somewhere deep inside her. The white wolf's eyes flashed gold, burning, ancient, alive. Then, with a final savage strike, it pinned the rogue beneath its weight. There was a brief, terrible sound, and then silence. The dark wolf lay still. The white one stood over it, chest heaving, blood glinting faintly on its muzzle. Its eyes lifted to Elara once more. For a heartbeat they held each other's gaze, the forest between them, time itself suspended. And then she ran. Her feet pounded against the dirt, her breath ragged as she tore through the trees. The festival lights reappeared ahead, blurry through tears and fear. She didn't stop until she broke through the tree line and stumbled back into the open square, chest heaving. The music was still playing. People were still laughing, drinking, dancing, as though nothing had happened. No one had heard the battle that had just torn through the forest beyond. Elara clutched her shawl tightly, her hands shaking. Liana spotted her and hurried over, concern knitting her brow. "Elara, child, what happened? You're pale." Elara forced a shaky smile. I just needed some air. It's nothing." Her grandmother didn't look convinced but nodded softly, guiding her to a nearby bench. "Too much excitement for one night, hmm?" Elara nodded, eyes darting once more toward the dark outline of the forest. In the distance, unseen by human eyes, the white wolf limped through the shadows, blood trailing faintly behind. He paused, lifting his head toward the moon, and as his howl cut through the night, soft, weary but full of life, Elara felt it in her chest like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. The connection had been made. Chapter 9, the morning after. Elara woke to sunlight spilling across the wooden floorboards, warm but blinding. She stretched, every muscle sore from yesterday's festival. Not from dancing or celebration, but from the memory of the forest and the wolf. The memory of golden eyes and teeth slick with fresh blood lingered in her mind like a shadow she couldn't shake. She shivered, though the room was warm. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled of fresh bread and brewing tea. Her grandmother, Liana, was setting the table, humming softly, while her younger cousin, a boy of about 10, arranged the cutlery with surprising care. Their quiet morning felt normal, comforting, but Elara's heart was still racing from the night before. She hesitated at the doorway, clutching her cardigan. "Morning, sweetheart," Liana said without looking up, her voice gentle. "Sleep well?" Elara tried to smile. "As well as can be," she murmured, dragging a chair over and sitting. The mug of tea her grandmother poured into her hands felt like a small anchor. "You will feel better after a proper breakfast," Liana said knowingly, laying a hand over hers. "And today, we're going into town. A little walk, a few errands. Fresh air might do you good." Elara nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what good meant anymore. Her thoughts wandered back to the white wolf. The pull toward the forest hadn't left her. Something about it, something in those eyes had felt familiar. Terrifyingly familiar. Her cousin, oblivious to her inner turmoil, jabbed her playfully with a fork. "Eat or I'll eat your toast." Elara laughed softly, though her mind was elsewhere. As she ate, she began recounting yesterday to her family, carefully omitting the more frightening details. She described the festival, the bonfire, the music, the cheering, but each time she tried to speak about the forest and the wolf, her voice faltered. Liana exchanged a look with the boy but didn't press. "I know, darling," she said. "The festival is magical, yes, but what you saw, it wasn't just imagination. Sometimes the forest speaks to those who are listening. You have a gift, or perhaps a warning. Either way, it's not something to fear." Her cousin's wide eyes looked between her and grandmother. "A gift? Really?" Elara forced a small smile, but her chest tightened. "I don't know, I just felt something." By mid-morning, they were ready to head into Hollow's Edge. The town looked almost the same as yesterday, quaint with its cobblestone paths and a few modern touches. A small cafe with bright umbrellas, shops with freshly painted signs. Villagers noticed them and waved, nodding warmly, though nothing more. Their first stop was Leora's little flower shop. The scent of roses, lavender, and wild herbs enveloped them. As Leora greeted them with a warm smile. "Elara, good to see you again. How was the festival?" Elara hesitated, searching for the right words. It was incredible, beautiful, and very loud." Leora laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yes, the bonfire tends to wake everyone in town, but it's tradition. Keeps the town protected, they say." Elara felt a shiver she couldn't explain. Was it superstition or intuition? She didn't answer. Next, they visited Elder Nalia, a friend of her grandma, the woman whose eyes seemed to pierce through you the moment you looked at her. She offered a soft nod and said nothing at first. After they left, Nalia is one of the elders if the town says Liana. She holds in many stories of the town, some mystical, some dark, although the youngs don't really believe in such tales. She holds the history of this little town and is not very warm, though. Elara blinked, unsure if she should feel comforted or frightened. Alas, Sarah, a curious teenage girl, who saw their departure from Elder Nalia's home, followed them through the streets. "You're Elara, right? From the festival?" she asked, tugging at her sleeve. "Can I come with you?" she said with a smile on her face. Elara smiled faintly, confused at the sudden arrival of the young girl, but couldn't bring herself to seem rude. Of course, she replied, unsure. As they wandered the town for supplies, fruit, bread, small trinkets for the family, Elara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It wasn't fear exactly, but a pull. Like the world had layers she couldn't see, and the forest, the wolf, and even Hollow's Edge itself were hiding secrets meant for her alone. Sarah had somehow made friends with the family, talking with Milo, giggling at his not-so-funny jokes, and made small talk from what she could remember. Sarah was born in this town and works at the dinner as a waitress, not odd for a teenage girl trying to make some cash. She saw a new lady and wanted to make a new friend. Elara never actually made friends. She was very reserved and later got lost in making a career and being the best at what she does. Friends was not something she was used to, although she did talk to a few people. Nonetheless, she was willing to accommodate Sarah, until the girl decides to leave. By midday, she felt drained, but something in her chest had shifted. She wasn't entirely safe, she knew that, but she was beginning to understand that there were pieces of herself and her world she had yet to discover. Chapter 10. Wandering Alone. Elara lingered near the edge of the square, where her family gathered their bags and finished their last preparations to leave. She felt a pull in her chest, heavy, insistent, like a knot of regret that refused to loosen. She opened her mouth to speak, hesitated, then finally said, I'll stay back for a while. I just need a walk." Her grandmother, Liana, arched an eyebrow but nodded gently. "Very well, dear. But don't wander too far. You know the town well enough." Her voice carried warmth, but there was also that unspoken worry that always accompanied her words. Her cousin gave her a small wave, a grin on his face. See you later, Elara, don't get lost. Bella hugged her, patted her head, and told her to not be late. Leaving her and Sarah noticed her shift in mood and said we was going to go back home. Thanks, Sarah, Elara said, voice quieter than she expected. They exchanged a brief, warm goodbye, and Sarah disappeared around the corner, leaving Elara to her solitude. Elara forced a smile, but it felt hollow. As her family departed, leaving the cobblestone streets quieter than usual, she began walking slowly, letting her mind drift where it pleased. If only I had left earlier, she thought bitterly. If only I hadn't stopped for that stupid exchange. Her teeth clenched at the memory of Arden's calm, piercing eyes, and the words that had cut sharper than any knife. I missed it, my chance. I worked so hard and it was gone in a moment. She thought to herself. After the interview, she discovered that the man she had spoken was Arden Blackwell, the CEO of Blackwell Enterprise, the same company she wanted to apply for. What a small world, she said out loud. Guess he really was some big shot in a fancy car. She let out a dry laugh. Her steps slowed as her chest tightened. I should feel angry, maybe, or sad, but mostly, I feel like I've let everyone down. My uncle, Bella, even Milo. They've given me so much. And what do I give back? Mistakes, regret, broken dreams. She stopped, taking a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She wrapped her arms around her torso. No, she whispered aloud, almost to the empty street itself. I'll have to try again. I will. There's no other way. I can't let this ruin me. The words felt fragile in the cool morning air, but they anchored her just enough to continue walking. She lifted her gaze, noticing the town around her with fresh eyes. Hollow's Edge was different this morning, quieter, more intimate than the bustling city she had left behind. The cobblestones were warm beneath her shoes, the small shops painted signs catching the sun in a way that made them feel alive, almost magical. The town smelled of fresh bread, blooming flowers, and earth warmed by the early rays of sunlight. She walked past the bakery, inhaling deeply. Even the distant laughter of children playing by the fountain felt lighter somehow, almost like a balm to her frayed nerves. She compared it to the city, its endless rush, its sharp edges, the constant clamor, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself a fleeting sense of peace. And yet, there was that pull in her chest again, a small tug she couldn't explain. She pressed her hand to it as if grounding herself, and tried to focus on the present, on the town, the streets, the smells, the sun on her face. She wandered further, taking in the small details she'd never noticed the way sunlight slanted through a cracked window, the children chasing a rolling hoop, the gentle rhythm of the fountain as water tumbled into stone. She passed a few villagers who greeted her with friendly nods. Their words were familiar, yet there was a strange cadence she couldn't place. Old expressions, idioms, or perhaps remnants of something older, deeper. She found herself pausing, wondering what they truly meant, but shook her head, letting the mystery drift away. Eventually, her path brought her to the edge of the forest. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches swaying with an almost sentient grace. She stopped, heart hammering, feeling that same pull that had guided her here yesterday. A shiver ran through her, equal parts fear and fascination. She gazed at the shadows between the trunks, the whisper of leaves in the wind. And for a long moment she let herself simply feel the fear, the loss, the quiet hope tucked beneath the ache. Then, with a sigh, she turned back toward the town. Her steps were slower now, deliberate. She didn't yet know what the pull meant, or why it tugged so urgently at her. But she knew she had to face the present before chasing the unknown. The sun climbed higher, warm on her shoulders, and for the first time since her interview, she felt herself exhale. It wouldn't be easy. She had lost something important. But there was still a world waiting to be seen, to be lived in, to be tried again. And somehow she told herself that had to be enough, for now. Chapter 11. Home, Heart, and Memories. Elara returned home, the weight of the reflections still pressing on her chest. Hollow's Edge had been beautiful, peaceful, almost magical, but stepping through the familiar doorway of her uncle's house brought a different kind of comfort, a grounded warmth, a reminder of belonging. The first thing she noticed was Milo, sprawled across the living room floor with a small wooden train set. "Hey there, builder," she called, kneeling down beside him. Milo's eyes lit up and he grinned. "Elara, come help me. This train's stuck on a hill." For the next few minutes, she let herself be completely absorbed, manipulating tiny trains alongside him, adjusting tracks, laughing quietly at his animated explanations of why the train had feelings and didn't want to go uphill. "You always make the trains do what they're supposed to," Milo said with awe, glancing at her. "I wish I could do that in real life." Elara chuckled softly, resting her chin on her hand. "Maybe you can. You just have to try, little brother. Keep trying." Their conversation meandered. He asked about school, friends, the festival from last night, while she carefully skirted around the forest encounter, though a quiet pull of unease lingered beneath her laughter. For the first time that day, she felt a connection that wasn't clouded by guilt or failure, a small island of serenity. After a while, Milo ran off to fetch a snack, and Elara found herself drawn to her aunt Bella, who was tidying the kitchen. "You look deep in thought, darling," Bella said, offering her a warm, knowing smile. "Come sit for a moment," Elara obeyed, sinking into the chair with a soft sigh. "I just missed the interview. I feel like I've let everyone down, like I've wasted my chance." Bella reached over, resting a hand on hers. "Elara, listen to me. One missed chance doesn't define you. You're not a failure. You're strong, determined, and capable. You can always try again. You have the heart for it." Alara's eyes glistened, a lump forming in her throat. "I hope so," she whispered, letting herself absorb the warmth of the reassurance. Her uncle, Alex, entered quietly, carrying a small stack of mail. "There's my favorite girl," he said softly, giving her a smile that tugged at her heart. They began making small talk, the weather, Hollow's Edge, the festival preparations. Then gradually, the conversation shifted. "You know," Alex began, glancing at her with a tender expression, "your mother, she had this way of lighting up a room. She loved fiercely, laughed easily, and never gave up on the people she cared for. She would have been proud of you today, even with everything that happened." Elara's chest tightened as tears threatened. I don't want to give up either," she whispered. "You won't," he said firmly. "You're not like that. You're like her. Steadfast, curious, and strong." Their grandmother, Liana, had overheard the conversation from the hallway. She stepped closer, placing a hand gently on Alex's shoulder. "Yes, Elara, your mother was remarkable. And so are you." Alex excused himself to check on Bella and Liam, leaving Elara alone with her grandmother. They wandered together into the hall where old photographs adorned the walls. Frozen moments of laughter, birthdays, quiet mornings, and warm embraces. "Your mother loved life," Liana said softly, pointing to a photograph of a young woman with bright eyes and an infectious grin. "She had courage, curiosity, and a heart that sought out the best in people. I see so much of her in you." Elara's fingers traced the frame carefully. I wish I could have known her more," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "And my father? I never really knew him. Do you know anything about him?" Liana's expression shifted slightly, a faint shadow crossing her otherwise gentle features. She gave a soft, almost imperceptible laugh, tucking the question away as if it were dangerous to speak. "Some stories are better left for another time, dear," she said. "For now, let's focus on the light." Elara felt the tug of curiosity stronger than ever, her mind filled with questions, but she also felt the warmth of her family, their love, their steadfast support, wrapping around her like a soft, protective blanket. The ache in her chest softened slightly. Even with the mysteries still lingering, even with her failure weighing on her, Elara realized she wasn't truly alone. And maybe, just maybe, she could take a step forward, one careful step at a time. Chapter 12, Whispers of the Forest. The next morning, Elara spent time with her family, helping Milo with small chores and watching her grandmother Liana organize the kitchen. Yet even amidst these familiar comforts, her mind refused to settle. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the forest, to the pull she had felt earlier, and to the fleeting white wolf from her dreams. She paused by the window, sunlight spilling across the floor, and traced the patterns of light on the walls. It wasn't real, right? She thought, trying to convince herself. Wolves don't just appear out of nowhere, especially not ones that look like that. And yet, deep inside, a whisper of intuition urged her otherwise, a silent echo that seemed to thrum in rhythm with her heartbeat. After breakfast, she lingered while the others prepared to step out again. Milo grabbed her hand, tugging her toward the fountain. "Come on, Elara, let's go see the town square again. There's a parade of some sort, and they're setting up stalls." She smiled weakly, letting herself be pulled along, but the pull in her chest never faded. Every step toward the cobbled streets felt simultaneously grounding and unsettling, as if invisible threads were tugging her toward the forest at the edge of Hollow's Edge. The town had shifted slightly since yesterday, more lively, more animated with the preparations for the evening's festivities well underway. Merchants arranged fruits, flowers, and candles. Children laughed while running through narrow alleyways. Even the air smelled different, infused with a subtle mix of wood smoke and warm earth, as if the town itself were holding its breath in anticipation. As she followed Milo through the stalls, she tried to focus on the tangible, the warmth of sunlight on her arms, the cool bite of a freshly picked apple, the rhythmic chatter of townsfolk she had begun to recognize. Yet every so often her gaze drifted toward the forest, where shadows danced behind the trees and the wind whispered secrets she could not yet understand. She paused, absently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Do you ever feel like something's calling you?" she asked Milo quietly, though he looked at her blankly. Milo shrugged. "Like when you hear a song you really like?" She laughed softly, the sound tinged with both sadness and wonder. "Something like that, yes, but deeper, harder to ignore." He tilted his head, sensing the seriousness but not the weight. "Maybe it's the forest saying hello," he said with a grin. Elara's smile faltered slightly. "Maybe," she murmured, though her intuition told her it was more than a simple greeting. She felt it in the pit of her stomach, in the tightening of her chest, in the way her pulse quickened as though the forest itself knew her. She let herself wander a few steps away from Milo, weaving between stalls, letting her fingers brush over handcrafted trinkets and baskets of herbs. The more she moved, the stronger the pull became, subtle yet undeniable, as though something or someone was aware of her presence, sensing her thoughts, her hesitation, and her heartbreak. For a fleeting moment she imagined the white wolf again, the one from her dreams, and felt the faintest spark of recognition. Her breath hitched, her heart skipping a beat. "It's impossible," she whispered to herself. "It was just a dream. Just a dream." And yet the pull continued, insistent, quiet, almost imperceptible to anyone else, like a whisper threading through the sunlit streets and brushing against the edge of her awareness. She shivered, not from cold, but from the unshakable feeling that something awaited her, just beyond sight, waiting for her to notice. She turned back toward Milo and the townsfolk, forcing herself to focus, yet she couldn't shake the sensation that the forest was alive. With eyes, watching, waiting, and somewhere deep within, she realized that the moment would come when she would have to face it, whatever it was. And maybe, just maybe, the pull was not one to fear, but one that would guide her toward something greater than she could yet imagine. Chapter 13. Unexpected Encounters. The sun hung high over Hollow's Edge, casting long golden beams through the narrow streets. The cobblestones glimmered, still warm from the morning sun, and the air carried the faint scent of baked bread, fresh apples, and the earthy aroma of the surrounding forest. Elara walked beside Milo, her young cousin's hand in hers, letting him lead the way through the familiar yet subtly enchanting town. She had promised herself she'd try to enjoy today, despite the lingering shadow of her failed interview. Her mind, however, refused to let her. the weight of if-onlys pressed on her chest, and she could feel the tension knotting in her shoulders. She breathed slowly, trying to calm herself. "It's not over. I can try again." Milo, sensing her quiet mood, gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "Elara, look! That stall smells like honey." She smiled softly, crouching to examine the pastries. Their golden crusts glinted under the sunlight, and a few tempting rolls peeked out from the basket. "It does, doesn't it? Want one?" "Yes." Milo bounced excitedly, and Elara chuckled quietly. His innocence was a balm to her frayed nerves. She bent to hand him a coin, but then a shadow fell over them. Her heart lurched violently. He was there, Arden Blackwell, the very man from that morning's accident, the man whose calm, cutting words had left her simultaneously humiliated and inexplicably stirred. He stood tall and imposing at the edge of the street, papers tucked under his arm, a presence that seemed to suck the warmth from the air around him. Instinctively, she stepped slightly in front of Liam, shielding him as if her mere presence could keep him safe. Her palms were clammy, her pulse hammering in her ears. Milo, oblivious, waved cheerfully. "Hello, sir." Arden's sharp gray eyes softened, a flicker of amusement crossing his usually unreadable features as they landed on the boy. Chapter 14, Arden. The forest was still humming with the echoes of the run when Arden finally shifted back, breath steaming in the cold night air. His bones rearranged smoothly, too smoothly for someone who had just torn through a rogue wolf like it was nothing. But the ache beneath his ribs betrayed the truth. The rogue had been fast, vicious. If he had been a second too slow, the girl, Elara, no. He pushed the thought away. He ran a hand through his damp hair, exhaling sharply as the moonlight caught the faint scratches healing slow but steady across his arms. They would be gone in minutes. Wolf healing was always fast, but something about that fight left a strange aftertaste under his skin. Not fear, not anger. Something else. Theo approached first, clothes wrinkled, breathing uneven. "Alpha, are you good?" "Fine," Arden replied, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "Rogue? Dead," Theo confirmed, casting him a look that lingered just a moment too long. His beta always noticed more than he let on. Behind them, the pack was celebrating, laughter ringing through the woods, wolves sprawled out catching their breaths, the smell of pine and smoke mixing with sweat. The run to the moon was complete. His people were safe, for now. But Arden wasn't listening to any of it. His mind was still back there, at the edge of the forest where moonlight had fallen over a terrified girl with brown hair and trembling hands. Elara. The girl who had stood in the middle of a road that morning and yelled at him without a shred of fear, was the same girl who had stared into the eyes of a rogue wolf hours later, alone, frozen. Moments from death. His jaw clenched at the memory. She shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been anywhere near the forest. She shouldn't. Why had she gone in? Why is she here in this town? Why had she looked at him, his wolf, like she knew him? And why had his wolf reacted the way it did? That was the part he couldn't shake. The moment he saw her, his wolf stopped, not hesitated, not paused, stopped, and everything else fell away. He had heard of it before, of course. Stories whispered through pack generations. The instinct, the recognition, the pull. But it couldn't be. It shouldn't be. He wasn't supposed to find his Luna yet. Certainly not a human. Humans rarely ever. No, he shook his head. He wasn't going to entertain something that would only complicate everything. The pack didn't need whispers or questions or political fractures, not with rogue activity increasing and the ceremony nearing. But the certainty he tried to force into himself didn't take root. Grandmother reached him next. Her eyes scanned him sharply, narrowing at the faint traces of injury. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," Arden said quietly. Her gaze softened, barely. "You were different tonight." Theo coughed under his breath as if to hide a grin. "Traitor." Arden straightened his shoulders. "The rogue caught me off guard." "That's not what I meant," she murmured, studying him. "Something in you shifted." His heartbeat twinged. "Must be your imagination." Grandmother snorted. "My imagination hasn't failed me in 73 years. Before he could respond, she added, If something is troubling you, Arden, you must face it before it grows. He didn't answer, because if he opened that door even a little, he feared what would spill out. By dawn, after ensuring the borders were secure, he made up his mind. He needed answers, not assumptions, not instincts. So he went to the town. Hollow's edge looked different in daylight, soft, warm, deceptively peaceful. Humans walked around carrying baskets, greeting one another with familiarity he'd never known. Flower boxes hung from windows. Wind chimes tinkled, and the smell of apple pastries drifted through the air. He didn't belong here, but something or someone drew him like gravity. Then he saw her. She was standing near a small vendor beside a child, her cousin, he guessed, a little boy who held her hand tightly while she spoke to him gently, as if calming his anxious energy. Arden paused, observed. She was different today, not fiery and sharp like the girl who snapped at him in the city, not pale and trembling like the girl in the forest. Something in between, something softer yet guarded. Her shoulders were drawn close, her fingers tapping against her arm, her gaze wandering as though searching for a place to breathe. She looked human, fragile even, but there was steel in her spine. Milo saw him first. The boy's eyes widened, then brightened as he waved. "Hi, sir!" Arden raised an eyebrow. Children rarely approached him so freely. Elara turned, and the moment her eyes met his, her entire body went rigid. She pulled the boy slightly behind her, protective, quick, instinctive. Arden blinked. Protecting the child? From him? Interesting. "Good morning," he said, voice low, neutral. Elara exhaled sharply, clearly trying not to roll her eyes. "You're here." A statement, not a greeting. "I am," he answered. "For what exactly?" she asked, trying very hard not to sound rude. He didn't blame her. Their last interaction wasn't exactly civil. "I had business in the area," he said smoothly. A half-lie, a thin one. She stared at him with a mixture of suspicion and unease, but mostly irritation. "Right." The little boy peeked around her and smiled again. Arden, despite himself, felt the corner of his mouth twitch, just slightly. "You're tall," the boy announced proudly, as if discovering something new. Elara groaned softly. "Milo," Arden nodded solemnly. "So I've been told." The boy giggled. Elara grabbed his hand, pulling him closer. "We should go." Her voice wavered, not in fear, but in unease. And something else he couldn't name. She stepped away, walking quickly. Milo waved again, and Arden lifted his hand in response. Only when she was out of sight did he finally let out the breath he didn't realize he was holding. His wolf sat inside him, alert, curious. Her, find her, watch her. Arden exhaled slowly, running a hand across his jaw. No, not yet. But as he turned away, he knew something with absolute certainty. Elara Myers was no ordinary human. And for the first time in years, maybe in his lifetime, Arden felt the beginning of something he couldn't control. Something dangerous, something inevitable. Something, the force that called her name. Elara's POV. Elara woke with a violent gasp. The kind that felt dragged out of her lungs, sharp and desperate. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs so loudly it filled her ears. The room was dark, but her dream still blazed inside her mind like a fire that refused to die. The white wolf, the same glowing eyes, the same overwhelming presence, the same silent pull. Only this time it felt closer. Too close. She pressed a shaking hand to her chest. The pulse beneath her palm raced as if trying to run ahead of her body. The dream had been stronger than ever. Vivid enough that she felt the cold forest air on her skin, smelled the earthy sweetness of pine, heard the low rumble of breath behind her. And beneath it all, a call, not a voice, not words, a pull, gravity, a summons from something ancient, older than the town, older than logic, older than her fear. She swallowed hard and looked toward her window. The moonlight spilled through like a white ribbon, soft and inviting. Too inviting. "No," she whispered, "this is ridiculous. I can't just go." But she already knew she would. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake anyone in the house. She pulled on a hoodie, tied her hair, and tiptoed through the wooden hallway. That creaked like it was tattling on her. When she reached the back door, she hesitated. This was insane. Walking into a forest, alone, after almost being mauled by a rogue wolf. But the fear didn't stop her. Something stronger pushed past it, gentle but firm, a knowing, as if she was meant to go. The night air kissed her skin the moment she stepped outside, cold enough to make her shiver but strangely comforting. The world was quiet, wrapped in a silver glow from the nearly full moon. She breathed in deeply and followed the pull, soft at first, then unmistakable, drawing her toward the forest. With each step, her heartbeat steadied. With each step, her fear faded. By the time she reached the tree line, she wasn't afraid anymore. She felt safe. The forest wasn't silent. It hummed, alive, aware of her presence. Leaves whispered secrets to the wind. The earth beneath her feet seemed to guide her, telling her where to step, when to turn, when to breathe. "I'm losing my mind," she murmured. But she kept walking deeper, drawn, guided, held. The forest smelled fresh and ancient at the same time. Moss, wood, morning dew that hadn't yet fallen. Soft moonlight filtered through the branches overhead, creating patches of gold and shadow. Elara slowed when a sound drifted through the trees. Soft footsteps. Not heavy like the white wolf. Not threatening, measured, gentle. She turned her head slowly. A wolf emerged from between two tall pines. Not the white one, not the rogue from last night. This one was slender, delicate almost, with a coat the color of autumn leaves, browns and golds blending in waves. Its eyes were warm, deep, and curious, not glowing in a threatening way, glowing like a lantern held out to a lost traveler. Elara's breath caught. She knew she should run. She knew she should scream. She knew she should at least back away. But she didn't. Her fear came late. Like her logic had overslept. It shot through her only after the wolf took a step closer. She froze, her hands trembling. The wolf didn't growl, didn't bare its teeth. It only tilted its head slightly, as if assessing her. "Hi," she whispered, voice barely audible. The wolf's ears twitched. Her hand lifted, slowly, shaking, without her permission. Just like with the white wolf, instinct overpowered fear. She extended her fingers hesitantly, and the wolf moved toward her with such calmness that tears pricked her eyes. When her hand touched its fur, she gasped, soft, warm, real. Not a dream, not imagination. It leaned into her touch. Her throat tightened. "You're not going to hurt me, right?" The wolf circled her once, brushing against her legs lightly. It walked a few steps ahead, then turned back and stared at her, signaling, calling, inviting. "You want me to follow you," she whispered. It blinked slowly. Elara hesitated, but only for a second. She followed. The forest deepened around them, shadows stretching long and silent. Her sense of direction slipped away. She couldn't tell where she'd come from, or how far they'd walked. If she had been alone, she would have panicked. But she wasn't alone, and somehow she wasn't afraid. Finally the wolf slowed, then stopped completely. They had reached the end of the woods, or rather an opening that led back toward the tree line behind her grandmother's home. She exhaled in relief. "You brought me back." The wolf looked at her, almost proud. Elara stepped closer and brushed her hand over its head again. "Thank you, you saved me." The wolf's tail moved slightly, not a wag, but something like acknowledgement. Then it stepped back. One step, another. Then it turned and padded into the forest until it melted into the shadows. Elara watched until the last glimmer of its coat disappeared. Only then did she whisper, "There is something going on here, something more than I understand." Her dreams, the white wolf, this wolf, the pull she felt in her chest. Something connected them. Something ancient and wild and alive. By the time she slipped back into the house, her mind was spinning. But beneath all the confusion and fear, a quiet determination settled inside her. Whatever this was, destiny, danger, madness, magic. She would uncover it, even if it changed everything. Chapter 16. The Walk Back. Elara's POV. I slipped quietly through the back door, careful not to let it creak. The house was still, too still. Dawn hadn't broken yet, but the faintest blue glow pressed against the horizon like the sky was taking a breath. My shoes were covered in forest dirt, my palms soft from stroking warm fur, and my heart was pounding in a way I couldn't explain. I closed my bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, letting out a shaky exhale. My mind felt like it was on fire. Too much at once, too much I couldn't make sense of. A wolf, another wolf, not a nightmare, not a hallucination, a real breathing creature that had looked at me with intelligence, calmness, recognition, and I touched it. I pressed a hand against my chest. My heartbeat hadn't slowed since I left the tree line. The moment the wolf had nudged me forward with its head, guiding me like I was something precious, something it needed to keep safe. It had ignited something inside me, a connection, warm and unsettling, a pull that wasn't human. I sat on the bed, pulled the blanket around my shoulders, and tried to steady myself, but instead felt the tremble in my fingers. From fear? From awe? I wasn't even sure anymore. What is happening to me? I whispered into the dim room. The dreams, the white wolf, the pull in my chest, last night's glowing moon, the rogue that had attacked me, and now this brown wolf, gentle, guiding, almost protective. It couldn't all be a coincidence. A knock on my door made me jump violently. Elara? Bella's soft voice drifted in, muffled but alert. Sweetheart? Are you awake? Your light is on. Crap. I scrambled into bed, burying myself under the blankets, trying to pretend I had been there all along. Yeah, I called, forcing a yawn. I just woke up early. The doorknob turned slowly, and Bella peeked in, her hair messy and her robe hanging loosely around her. She gave me a warm, sleepy smile that instantly made guilt pinch at my ribs. You okay? You look pale. She walked in and brushed my forehead, checking if I had a fever. I swallowed. I'm fine, just weird dreams again. Her expression softened with concern, the kind that made my chest ache. The same dream? I nodded. The one with the forest and the wolf, I added before I could stop myself. She paused, her hand frozen midair. Wolf? Again? My throat closed. I couldn't tell her everything. Not yet. Not until I understood it myself. It's just symbolic, I think. I lied gently. Probably because of the festival and everything from yesterday. Her eyes softened even more at that. My missed interview, my stress, everything I'd been trying so hard to hold in. Oh, honey, she whispered, sitting beside me and pulling me into her arms. You've been carrying too much. For a moment, I sank into her hold, closing my eyes as her fingers smoothed my hair the same way my mother might have done, if she had lived. The ache in my chest burned, but in a softer way, a needed way. You'll figure everything out, Bella murmured. But please don't lose sleep over things you can't change. You're allowed to rest, Elara. Rest. If only she knew rest was the last thing that felt possible right now. She gave my shoulder a squeeze before standing up. We're making breakfast soon. Come down whenever you're ready. Okay, I whispered. When she left, I exhaled shakily, pressing both hands over my face. The wolf, the dreams, the pull, the way I walked into the woods like the forest itself had called me, and the way I hadn't been afraid until I came back to myself. Something was wrong. Or maybe something was finally waking up. I slipped out of bed again and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to look at the tree line. The forest looked still, innocent, and quiet, as if nothing had happened. As if it hadn't swallowed me whole just hours ago. As if a living creature hadn't met me there with familiarity in its eyes. But something inside me whispered, it saw you, it knows you, and this is only the beginning. My fingers curled against the windowsill, my pulse rising again. Whatever was happening, I wasn't imagining it, I wasn't dreaming about it, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't supposed to run from it. Chapter 16. Arden's POV. The realization. Arden hadn't slept. He stood at the edge of the northern ridge long before sunrise, arms crossed tight, eyes fixed on the forest that stretched endlessly beneath him. The cold wind bit his skin, but his body barely registered it. His thoughts were too loud, his senses too sharp. Something had shifted in the forest last night, something he couldn't ignore. He inhaled slowly, letting the scents of the night roll through him like a wave. Pine, moss, damp earth, the fading trail of a rogue wolf, and threaded between all of it, faint, soft, impossible. Elara. Her scent drifted like a whisper he shouldn't have heard, like a memory that wasn't supposed to cling to him as strongly as it did. He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. She had been here, in his forest, alone. How the hell did she get this deep without being torn apart? He muttered. His wolf stirred under his skin, pacing restlessly. Because she was protected. Arden gritted his teeth. Protected by who? You? His wolf's response was immediate, a push, a thrum, a single word vibrating through every nerve in his body. Mate. Arden's eyes snapped open, breath cutting short. No. His voice was low, firm. Don't start. The wolf didn't retreat, didn't soften, just pushed harder. Mate. Impossible, Arden hissed under his breath. She's human. But the forest didn't care. Neither did the wind that carried her scent. And neither apparently did the part of him he spent his entire life controlling. Arden ran a hand through his hair in frustration. His wolf was rarely wrong, but this? No, he wouldn't allow it. Bonding to a human was a death sentence. For her, for him, for everyone involved. He forced himself to walk, moving through the forest with practiced silent steps. The deeper he went, the heavier the truth pressed against him. Because every time he tried to follow the rogue's fading trail, Elara's scent veered across it, cut through it, walked beside it. She had been there at the exact time the rogue was hunting, a human girl, alone, and she hadn't died. How did you survive that, Elara? He whispered into the cold air. The forest didn't answer, but his wolf did, because she is ours. Arden's chest tightened painfully. Stop, just stop. But his wolf pushed forward again, restless, agitated, refusing to be silenced. He followed the trail for nearly an hour, until he reached the bend in the river, a quiet place, surrounded by ancient pines. And there, he froze. Paw prints, fresh, not rogue, not his pack. Arden crouched beside them, running his fingers lightly over the indentation. A young wolf, smaller, familiar, one of his own, he murmured to himself, recognizing the pattern. He stood slowly, mind racing. She wouldn't have been out here alone unless... A faint shift in the air made him stiffen. Elara's scent again. Not faint this time, not passing, lingering, as if she had stood here for a long time. He turned in a slow circle, scanning the trees, the riverbank, the shadows. His breath grew shallow. She was here, he whispered. Right here. His wolf pulsed with a deep, possessive certainty. Close. She was close. She touched the wolf. Arden's heartbeat slammed so hard it felt painful. He ran both hands over his face. She touched a wolf. He groaned. A human girl willingly touched a wolf? Are you kidding me? His wolf pushed again. Pride, approval, claim. Enough! Arden snapped aloud, louder than he meant to. Birds scattered from a nearby tree. He didn't care. He was losing his control. He hadn't lost control in years. He paced the riverbank, boots digging into the soil, mind spiraling. Elara wandered into the forest in the middle of the night. A rogue was active, and one of his wolves guided her. Arden sucked in a breath. There's something different about her, his wolf answered instantly. Yes. He squeezed his eyes shut. No, that's not what I meant. Different doesn't mean... Mate? There are rules, Arden growled. Traditions, bloodlines. Humans can't. She can. His chest constricted, because deep down, where he didn't want to look, part of him already knew. He had known since the night of the festival, since her eyes met his across the lantern-lit street and the world stilled for half a heartbeat. He felt her, before she spoke, before she moved, before she even looked his way. He felt her, and now her scent lingered in every breath he took. Arden furiously kicked a stone into the water. It skipped twice before sinking. "This is going to be a problem," he muttered. His wolf hummed in agreement, but not out of concern, out of satisfaction. Deep, bone-deep satisfaction. Arden headed deeper into the woods, tracking the last direction the prince had gone. His steps were faster now, sharper. He needed answers. He needed to understand why Elara could step into a werewolf forest and come out unharmed, why her scent felt wrong in all the right ways, why his wolf kept pushing toward her like she was gravity itself. The trees grew thinner as he approached the clearing behind the cottage. Her cottage. The moment her home came into view, his wolf went still, alert, focused, listening. Arden's eyes narrowed. He smelled it immediately. Not dangerous. Her. Fresh. As if she had passed this spot only minutes ago. His pulse hammered. "She's awake," he whispered. "She's close." His wolf surged with an eager primal force. "Find mate." Arden exhaled sharply. "She's human. She doesn't know what we are. She doesn't know what you want. She will." His hands curled at his sides, frustration burning like fire beneath his skin. This was bad, dangerous, forbidden. And yet his feet moved on their own, carrying him closer to her home. Each step felt heavier, like the universe itself had decided to pull him forward. He reached the edge of the trees and stopped. The lights were off, windows dark, but he could sense her presence. Inside, soft, warm, steady, like a heartbeat in the night, his own heartbeat answered automatically. He hated that. He hated how effortless it felt. He hated the way his wolf stood at attention because of a girl who didn't know she was walking through danger every day. A girl who somehow walked through his world unharmed. A girl who smelled like destiny, even though he didn't believe in destiny. He took a slow breath, forcing himself to step back. "She's not ready," he whispered into the wind. His wolf disagreed. "We are." Arden turned away sharply. "We're not doing this. Not now." But as he walked back into the darkness of the forest, he knew something with absolute certainty. Elara wasn't just a girl who wandered into danger. She wasn't just a human who got lucky. She was tied to this place, to the wolves, to him, and whether he wanted it or not. This was only the beginning. Chapter 17. When the world began to stir. After her walk in the forest, the world itself felt different. She blinked into the pale blue glow filtering through her curtains, the light cool and quiet, like dawn was holding its breath. A soft vibration hummed beneath the silence, faint, steady, almost like a heartbeat that didn't belong to her. Her eyes widened as she sat up slowly. No fear, just a deep, unsettling knowing. She stepped outside minutes later, dressed and hoping the cold air would clear her head. Morning wrapped around her in crisp silver air, but instead of calming her, everything sharpened. Birds perched in the treetops, but their songs faltered as she walked out. A squirrel paused mid-motion, eyes wide and fixed on her. Even the breeze stilled for a moment, as if the world was waiting for her next breath. Elara frowned, whispering, "Why are you all staring at me?" The animals didn't scatter, they didn't run, they simply watched. It was not curiosity, not fear, something closer. She took one cautious step off the porch. Branches rustled as if in greeting, birdsong rising all at once in a coordinated chorus. A shiver crawled up her spine. "Okay," she breathed. "That's new." In the kitchen, her grandmother stood at the stove stirring a pot of oats. The moment Elara walked in, her grandmother's shoulders stiffened, barely noticeable, but Elara caught it immediately. "Morning, Granny." Her grandmother turned, smiling warm but eyes scanning her with unsettling precision. "Morning, child. You look different." "Dreams again?" Elara hesitated. They weren't bad, just intense. Her grandmother's spoon slowed. "Dreams have meanings. You must listen to them, and whenever you need to talk, remember your grandma is here for you," she said with a hand to her cheeks. "I know," Elara whispered. A flicker of emotion crossed the old woman's face before she smoothed it away. "Good," she said softly. But the word sounded less like reassurance and more like warning. Later, Elara sat in the backyard, her knees pulled to her chest, watching sunlight flicker through the leaves. Every rustle, every bird call felt amplified, like the world was speaking in a language she was beginning to understand. Milo dropped down beside her with a grunt. "You're unusually quiet today. Just tired," she murmured. He raised a brow. "Tired? Why?" "I don't know, I feel different, I guess," she admitted. Liam nudged her shoulder. "You know we're here for you, right? You don't have to deal with everything alone," he said with a smile. She wished she could tell him about the shifting forest, about emotions that weren't hers brushing her skin like whispers, about the dreams that felt like memories she shouldn't have, but even she didn't know how to explain it to the boy. "I'm okay," she said, barely audible. He didn't believe her, but he stayed, quiet, solid, a presence she didn't know she needed. That night, Elara sat by her bedroom window, staring at the rising moon. It wasn't full, yet it glowed with unnerving brightness, like it was searching for her. Her chest tightened with an ache she couldn't name. "Why do I feel like this?" she whispered. The moon offered no words, just a slow, warm pull deep in her bones, like a tide drawing her towards something ancient and inevitable. Hands trembling, she reached for her old journal. Dust puffed from the cover as she opened to a blank page. The pen hovered, then finally moved. "Something is changing. I know it. The animals see me differently. I can feel people, their emotions, like echoes inside me. And my dreams, wolves, the moon, a voice calling my name. I'm scared, but not scared. It feels like something I've always been meant to become." She closed the journal, heart racing. Whatever was waking inside her, it was no longer subtle, no longer ignorable. And the world, the forest, the sky, the very air, were walking with her. Chapter 18. Elara decided to go to the forest after her encounter with Arden. The forest seems to make her calm, and all the more it was in the afternoon the possibility of something bad happening was less. She reached the tree line and made a mental note of where she was passing by. After walking for what seemed like half an hour, she found what looked like a clear circle with large barks of wood. It made a great place to sit. She sat, took her journal and computer from her tote bag, and drifted into work. The forest was quite peaceful. You could hear the birds, the rustle of leaves, and the smell of trees. That wonderful sensation made Elara's stay there something worth remembering. She warped up her work and was ready to leave. She followed her way back. But even after walking for 40 minutes, she didn't reach the clearing. That was bad. She checked her cell phone to make a call, but there were 0 bars. She couldn't get a connection. With that, she had no hope but to wander the woods and pray she makes it out before sunset. She walked and walked, but it seemed like she was only getting deeper into the forest. She was already tired and there were still no bars, and it was a few minutes to sunset. Fear started to creep in. The woods came alive at night, and she wouldn't want to be left at its mercy. The sun had fallen, and Elara was still somewhere in the heart of the forest. It was getting cold, and every rustle of leaves made her jump. Then came a howl. She broke into a run, letting her flashlight lead the way. Another one broke out again, and she doubled her pace. She remembered the other time she was in the forest, the wild wolf that came at her. If it wasn't for the white one, she would have been really hurt. And who knows how many are here now. She didn't stop until she reached a clearing like the one she sat in when she came into the forest. She stopped to catch her breath. She sat checking her phone when all of a sudden, the sound of a twig snapping made her turn. She locked eyes with a wolf. She broke into another run, even faster than the last, all tiredness forgotten in the face of fear. She tripped and tumbled further, and the sound of the wolf behind her was gone. Her breathing was ragged, and she felt something sharp behind her back. She turned to find a muscular woman with a spear, and behind everything else lies a great manor overlooking a village with glowing light. Her vision was black as something was placed over her head. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more stories by Maple. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.